All right, here we go. So I promised that I was going to keep up with all of my videos and film week to week, and my friends were just like, just be honest and open. So I work a regular job. I work, a regular 9 to 5, sometimes a little bit longer. And, doing YouTube is something that I do extra on the side, not like my primary job, and something that, what the heck just happened? What? Again, my camera went off on me. So I know that I promised that I would keep up with this house in Georgia a little bit more than I did in California. Essentially in California, I waited until the very end when the house was all done and remodeled, and then I went back and did the filming. So in California, I was actually a full-time graduate student working on my system engineering degree while trying to film on the side and do the actual work, a lot of those projects that you see me doing in California. And I attempted to do the same thing here in Georgia, but I just felt very overwhelmed by doing that. So I decided along the way I would film, edit, and post up. Problem is that I have a regular job that I work all week, and then on my free time I'm usually at the house doing projects, and then that leaves no time to edit videos. So that's the reason why there's a very long time in between filming each video. So anyways, I'm just gonna crank it out by doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 videos today. I think I might change my top maybe 1 or 2 times, but nonetheless, that is what I'm gonna do today. So a little bit about the house that I didn't quite give too much background on is that my house is in a historical district, and it was built in 1916, finished, completed, but the build actually started in 1890. Stop it. 1890. And I end up getting the plat, which is like, it shows like where all the properties were, and then how each property is broken up, and then who owned those pieces of land at that time. In the 1800s, apparently the neighborhood wasn't a neighborhood necessarily, it was like all farm country. And then the farm that actually is right next door to me, that owner decided to split off the property and sell off different parcels. And so that's when the construction started on my house. So there is a plat that shows my house in the original owner's name around in I think it was 1880 or 1890. I gotta recheck the plat, but I'm not gonna show you the plat because therefore you would know my address. So I'm not gonna do that. But it shows the plat, and it shows like how the street and everything used to be designed and laid out. It shows where streets used to be, where there are no longer. It's just very interesting to see that. Now, some of those plots of land have been further parceled out and like split up, and they're like townhouses on the very end of the corner near us. And then there's like 2 newer houses right next door to me to the left. And so those newer houses, when I say newer, they're not like newer 2020, 2015, they're newer houses like 1980, 1970. So that's what I mean by newer, but it's newer as opposed to the rest of the houses on the entire street that are all historical homes. And so that takes care of our side of the street. The houses across the street from me were built in like 1910. Some of them are 18. One was built in like 1870, something like that. So anyways, that is the neighborhood, and that is where I live. So how I found my house. So I found the house by accident and mistake. I was actually really enthralled with a particular neighborhood downtown. It's another historical neighborhood. When I moved to Georgia, I wanted a historical home, and that was something that I always wanted to have and always wanted to do a project on that. So I've had the new construction in Virginia. I had the 1950s bungalow in California. Here in Georgia, where there's a lot of history, good, bad, and different. I wanted to get a historical home, and so that was the biggest thing. I felt like that was the coup de grace of house remodel and house restoration. So anywho, I end up really enthralled with this one neighborhood downtown. The city was putting a whole bunch of money into, the downtown area with bars and restaurants, and I could walk literally from home to these bars and restaurants. I was like in love. When I got here, things changed quite significantly for me, because perception on viewing things online and Google Earth are quite different when you walk through the neighborhood and you see the neighborhood at all hours of the day. I would suggest that you go and see the neighborhood like, you know, at sporadic hours after kids get out of school, in the morning and in the afternoon. And unfortunately downtown there are other issues, because the neighborhood sits right on the border of a really bad neighborhood. And everybody was like, you got to be strapping, even if you're living in this one area that the downtown city is trying to put a whole bunch of money into by putting bars and restaurants, and there are a lot of investors in that particular area. However, right next to it, it is a horrific neighborhood. In fact, majority of the crime in this city is from that particular neighborhood. Like if you hear shootings and deaths, that's where it is, right next door, like right in that little town. So my perception of living downtown, or what I wanted to do, significantly changed, because not only of that, but also to the properties like 2 years ago in that area were only selling for $15,000. And with this huge boom of engineers and doctors moving into the area, because there's a teaching hospital in the downtown area that has tremendously expanded, the houses skyrocketed, and they're now trying to charge people $290,000, which is a big difference from $15,000, you know, 2 years ago. And so I just decided, you know, this is just not for me. And I looked since October, got here in January, and I continued to look. And it was one day that I ended up, you know, just searching, end up finding a house that I really liked. But I said, I'm gonna give this neighborhood one more chance, because it's closer to the downtown than that bad neighborhood. So I figured, you know, it would be better. And then I decided, my realtor was sending me, you know, look at this property. So I told her I would look at this other property that was sitting on the market, and had been sitting for 60 days plus. And which is abnormal for this area, being that there's a huge like bombardment of literally of all these engineers and all these people in the medical industry. You would think, you know, that nothing would sit on the market. Things have been sitting on the market for 24 hours or less. So I couldn't believe that this property has been sitting for 60 days. So I went to go, we looked at the house that I bought first. And when I walked in, I knew right away that was going to be my forever home. And I just fell in love with it. It was fire damaged on the first level. There was a fire on the first level. It was gutted. It needed a lot of repair. The house, front yard, side yard, backyard, everything was very overgrown. But the house seemed solid. Even though it needed new electrical, it needed new plumbing, it needed everything. I fell in love because I can see the potential. I saw the historical bones. I saw that foundation, and I just fell in love. We went to the other neighborhood and saw the house that I so desired, and I wanted to be in this neighborhood. And we walked through the house, and myself and one of my good friends that is actually here in Georgia, she was already living here. She came with me on the house hunting, and my realtor, and right then and there, all three of us were like, nope. So that neighborhood was completely off the block, and I was like, I want this house. So obviously I couldn't do conventional loan. Conventional loan, pretty much the house has to be livable. You have to be able to move in. Obviously, if there's not working water, there was no electricity ran to the property because all of that had been cut due to it being electrical fire, and they removed all of that knob and tube and sort of kind of replaced a little bit of the electrical, but not fully so. They put electrical boxes but didn't wire everything into the electrical box. Another story. But I had to go another way. So I end up applying for a loan from a local bank to get a loan for it's called a construction loan. And it's part of it is that bank will fund 85% of it, and then I had to fund 15% of the loan. And that includes your work as well. So in the 60 days of our contingency period, 30 days of contingency, 60 days before we close, I had, or due diligence for, excuse me, between the 30 days of the due diligence period and the 60 days before closing, because I put the bid on the house, the owner accepted it, we went in COVID crisis. That's how everything played out. So I had 30 days of due diligence, and during that time period, I could pull out as a part of state Georgia law. I could pull out anytime, and I get my money back, no problem. And he couldn't pull out. That's the whole thing, is that it's kind of a little bit different as opposed to in California. If I pulled out, I would have lost, all of my money. That's a weird thing of California laws. But anyways, so I went ahead and got all of the contractors. I had 3 bids for each different project. So for the inside of the house, I split away from the roof, the soffit repair, the porch, the yard landscaping, all of that I just separated out because I wanted to have different, foundation was another one, because I wanted to have different contractors that I could pay directly and not run into the same issue that my parents did, where they had one contractor and whatever he told them, they paid him and he wasn't paying the subs. So that's what happened to my parents, and I didn't want to run into that issue because this is a high dollar value and a very huge investment of my money, and I didn't want to take those chances of possibly losing anything. I didn't have money to recoup because all of my assets had to go into this house. So after that, you send all of the quotes to the bank, and so the price to buy the house plus all the quotes, that's your total value of your mortgage price. And then so 85% of that total price the bank pays for, 15% you pay for, and that's my bank particularly, but usually it's the same. Sometimes it's, you're paying 80, they're paying 80, you're paying 20. It could be that way. And then you still have to pay closing costs as well. So I still had to do that because the lawyers and everybody else had to be paid as a part of this, as well as the brokers had to be paid. So all of that still had to occur, and I had to pay for all that. So we get into the actual closing date, and there was all this drama. I don't know if I'll tell you. So in the back of my house, there's like a yard, and then there's a rental property, and in that rental property there's 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom suites. There's one on the first level, one on the second level, and I had renters living back there, or should I say not me, the previous owner had renters there, and they were like, they didn't want to move. They were only paying $500 for rent, super cheap to live in this particular area, especially in the historical district. There's nothing for that price in that neighborhood at all. And to get them out, my realtor ended up finding both of them places to live because they said they couldn't find places to live because of the code of what's obviously happening with the pandemic. She ended up finding them a place to live,